So the element we're going to be looking at today is carbon, and carbon is a very common element in the Earth, and its signature is that it has, as you can see here from this picture, 6 brown dots in the middle indicating 6 protons, and this is what gives carbon an atomic number of 6 and makes it very unique from all the other elements. We also see kind of floating around our carbon element here is we see a bunch of electrons. And the number of electrons equals the number of protons, so if we have 6 protons, we're going to have 6 electrons on the outside. And we see the electron model shows that there's a group on the inside, and then there's a group on the outside. There's 2 here on the inside, and there's 4 on the outside. And later on I'll talk about how those 4 can be shared. So carbon has 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons. It can also bond with a number of elements. And so next I'm going to tell you a little bit about the atomic, the commonalities the element has with this group, and also what are some of the things it has in common with other elements in the periodic table. So some common uses of carbon, as you see right here, are, for example, one thing carbon is used for is we use it for graphite to make pencil lead. Another thing it's also used for is for making like wings of aircraft because it's very durable. We also use it for plastic, so it's very common with that as well. Now some things about carbon and what it has in common with some of its other members is that we see here this green column here. These are things that are in the same group as carbon. So this is the same vertical column. And what we see is we see some elements, germanium, actually the Si here, right below carbon, is silicon, germanium, and then Sn is tin, and Pb is lead. And things about these elements is that what they have in common is they all have commonalities that are very similar. I'll start at the bottom. Lead and tin are pure metals. They're very good conductors of electricity. Germanium, silicon, these are actually what are called metalloids. They're kind of in the middle. They actually have semiconducting properties. They can conduct under some conditions and not some others. Carbon is actually a non-metal, but interestingly it can conduct electricity, but it doesn't have a lot of the things in common that it does with other metals. For example, carbon is very dull in color and it's very brittle. It's not very malleable. So it can conduct electricity, but unfortunately it doesn't fall into the other physical properties that gives some of these other metals their signature. The same thing that also has in common with a number of elements is that it is a non-metal. And I've only shown a few of them here. There's actually columns to the right, which are halogens and noble gases. But for just the sake of argument here, I'm just going to show that these elements here are all non-metals. So we see nitrogen and phosphorus, oxygen, sulfur, and selenium. And most of these obviously are non-metals, but what makes them non-metals is they're not good conductors of electricity. And also what the solids tend to be brittle, dull, and not very malleable. This lovely chair here is going to talk about how carbon bonds. And carbon bonds through covalent bonds. And we saw from our earlier picture that I'll just have right here, we see that carbon has 2 atoms on the inside and 4 on the outside. So I'm just going to have the same sort of picture here, but it's these 4 electrons on the outside which can be shared with other substances to create new compounds. And so what we see here is we see how carbon has bonded with some hydrogen atoms. And hydrogen has an atomic number of 1. And what we see that the 2 electrons in the middle still remain. But now the 4 on the outside have bonded with the hydrogen atoms. So now we have a new compound, and the hydrogen are now sharing electrons with the carbon atoms. And you can see how they're spaced out here, kind of a nice little love relationship. So this is an introduction to carbon. I hope you guys learned something, and this is a Rockstar production.